Almost 2 years ago, Mercedes-Benz released a car called the EQA, which is their entry-level all-electric car. However, since its launch, have there been any updates? Is it still worth it in 2023? But most importantly, should you be considering an all-electric car for your next car purchase? Well, I'm going to cover all of that today, but first, that cinematic intro. So guys, this is the Mercedes-Benz EQA. Now normally when Mercedes-Benz bring out new models and things, it's kind of every 6-7 years or so, with a facelift halfway in between. But Mercedes-Benz very quietly updated the range on one of the electric variants last year, and this is the first time I've managed to get my hands back on an EQA to kind of revisit it and go through it all. And then at the very end, if you stick around till then, we'll get it out on the road and show you what it's all about. Now, starting on the interior first, for anyone who's had a Mercedes-Benz over the past few years or seen the design of them, they'll be very familiar with this kind of double widescreen display, and even this year in 2023 it looks absolutely stunning, especially when it's coupled with all the ambient lighting. As you can see, there's a variation of blue and red at the moment. Now, I won't cover the multimedia system completely in depth here, as I have loads of other videos on my channel about it, but one thing I will touch on is the absolute basics. So Mercedes-Benz have made this multimedia system super easy to use. You've got phone, sat-nav, radio and media, the most 4 common functions you'll use on it, front and centre. And as you've seen, there is a touchpad in the middle to control it, and it is also touchscreen as well. And you can talk to it, and you can do it from the steering wheel, so you can kind of choose which way you want to operate it with. But the one thing I will just touch on very quickly, as it is extremely important with this car, on the sat-nav, instead of obviously searching for fuel stations, you can search for charge points by clicking this button just here. And that said, this is very, very important, because when coupled with a thing called Mercedes Me Charge, of which you get free of charge for the first 3 years in the UK, although that may vary around the world, so double check with your local Mercedes. But if you have a look here, as you go down this list, these are all the charge points locally, and some of them have these little chevrons and green and red dots. Basically, those ones there work with the car. I'll kind of cover it very quickly. So say if you wanted to use this one here, this charge point, what you'd normally have to do is get to the charge point. And you know how you like pay for parking, sometimes you have to look at that location number like in a car park, and then you have to download the app and pay for it on your phone and kind of get the parking done that way. That's how it's like for charging in the UK. But Mercedes-Benz had this kind of mini Mercedes network called Mercedes Me Charge, and you can literally go onto here. So let's do this one, for example, Holiday Inn Express. Obviously, if I was outside the charge point, you can literally click this button here, start charging session, and it can bill your bank account, credit or debit card, all from in the car. So it's like this one unique package basically all built in. So Mercedes-Benz have really thought about it just to kind of enhance that experience in the car, just to make it as seamless as possible. But I have covered Mercedes Me Charge in a separate video, so there's a link in the pop-up banner up above, and there's a link in the description down below as well. So it is imperative that that is set up from day one, so just to kind of make that experience just that little bit easier. Now, of course, over here on the right hand side, this is where the gear stick is. Now, I call it gear stick, but actually in an electric car there are no gears, so call it the drive selector maybe. But basically it's really easy. You've just got up for reverse, down for drive, and then the P for park on the end. So super easy to use. And then of course left hand side you've got the indicators and wipers, so super easy. All the buttons in the middle down here are of course climate control, and then various buttons down here to control the screen. So everything's all laid out nice and easily. You can almost kind of separate the car from where you're sat here in half. So on the right hand side of the steering wheel, that controls right hand side of things on the car, and then the left hand side controls left hand side. And there's various buttons down here that do this screen. So super easy to use. Now let's have a look at the rear seats. So guys, onto the rear seats. Now this seat is currently set up for my driving position as always, and I'm 6'2" and I have, well, long legs anyway. But you must factor in with most EVs is that the batteries go under the floor here. So the floor in this is slightly raised. I kind of measured it just to the GLA, and it's kind of roughly about that much or so. So obviously if anyone's really tall, factor that in for if they're going to be sitting in the back. But there again, this is Mercedes-Benz's entry-level electric car. So if you're wanting something bigger, there's the EQB, there's the EQC as well. Or if we didn't all go for the SUV route, there's the EQE and EQS as well. And coming this year, there's an EQE SUV and EQS SUV. So loads of different electric cars to try. Obviously, this is Mercedes-Benz's smallest. So just factor that in, of course, if you have any like really tall passengers in the back. But other things, of course, you've got that nice red stitching on the seats here, continue to the back. Got your usual cup holders in here, just like this. There's a USB-C port down here as well, vents in the back, storage in the doors as well. So, yeah, very, very good. And then, of course, the seats, you can fold them down as well. In this car, it's a 40-20-40 split, which we'll get onto in the boot in just a moment. Up next is the boot. So the boot is 340 litres, just like this. Of course, as I mentioned, you can fold the seats down. They can do a 40-20-40 split, just in case you need a little bit more space. And of course, the parcel shelf can come out. The cables here, that's for charging. I'll cover charging in a minute. This is via a Type 2 charging cable, but there's another faster one as well, which you'll find on charge points, just oversimplification just for now. This is also included in the EQAs, which is a kind of reversible mat with waterproofing on one side, which is pretty good. Under the floor, there's a tiny bit of space. When I say tiny bit, it's really, really small. But mainly under here, you've got the tyre repair kit, first aid kit, a manual, locking bolts, and a warning triangle as well. Obviously, the batteries go into there in the under the floor plan of the car, so won't be as much space as, say, like a GLA or something. But of course, if you did need more space, don't forget this is the smallest one. The EQB, funny enough, literally just there is the larger one, has a more squared off design, and is actually a 7-seater, believe it or not, as well. And the seats in the very, very back on the third row go completely flat. So that's the boot on the EQA. Let's have a look at the next thing. And up next are the major changes to the EQA. Now, when the EQA first came out, it was called an EQA 250, and this had 190 horsepower, which is really, really good. You know, very lively. Of course, being electric, it has that instantaneous torque, so really, really good. However, Mercedes-Benz then introduced 2 extra electric variants, and this was an EQA 300 and 350. So horsepowers of those are 190, 228 and 292, so different varying horsepower. Notice as well that the 300 and 350 also have 4MATIC, so the 250 is front wheel drive, so obviously factor that in as well if you were needing a 4-wheel drive EV. Now the thing that's changed is on the EQA 250, so that is now gone and it's been replaced with an EQA 250 Plus. And the Plus basically means it's got a little bit more range. And that is achieved by a higher efficient electric motor and a slightly larger battery, which does lead to slightly increased charge times. And I do mean slightly, it's minutes. So I think that's more than welcome, because now the range is a lot higher. So range on the previous one was 263 on the EQA 250. Now it goes up to 324. So that's really, really good to see, because now it starts with a 3, and just for that slight increase in charge time, so it's minutes now, I think that's really good to see, because obviously that is then touching on range of petrol and diesel cars, you know, so obviously depending on the fuel tank size, but starting with a 3, really, really good to see. Right then guys, so test drive on the Mercedes-Benz EQA. Now this is the entry-level version, so sadly I didn't have access to the 300 or 350 with the 4MATIC system. But I have driven the EQB 350, and that uses the same electric drivetrain, and it's rapid. But there again, so is this car, you know, because it is electric, you do have that instantaneous torque and that silent drive. So it is currently on right now, and literally foot on the brake pedal into drive using the drive selector up here, and well, absolute silence. Now obviously as you get up to speed, you'll hear the kind of wind noise and usual tyre noise as the tyres of course roll across the floor, but it's always gets you the first time you turn on an electric car. If you haven't been driving them, you know, day to day, and then you get in one, and it's just that super silent drive. You could literally whisper in here. Oh, look at that, traffic lights go green straight away. Now, of course, as I mentioned earlier, this is based on the GLA, so has a very, very similar feel and shape and size on the inside, and of course the exterior as well, because essentially it is the same chassis, but Mercedes-Benz have of course made the electric motors a prominent feature in the EQA to make it electric, because not everyone needs a completely different car or big car. Like there's some new Mercedes-Benz models coming out this year, the EQE SUV and EQS SUV. They're going to be really, really big cars, so this is obviously really good to see that this has had an improvement to basically give you that greater range that I mentioned earlier in such a small kind of factor of a car that's easy to park, and also, most importantly, easy to get in and out of as well. It's not too low down to the floor. Now, because it has that instantaneous torque, this is where it's particularly useful for overtaking or even getting up to speed. It doesn't mean you need to be a boy racer or anything like that. It's just really, really useful in case you need to zip up to speed or get out of trouble or something like that. And having electric, well, virtually any electric car, of course, has that. And in Mercedes, it's this little dynamic select button down here. So if I turn that on onto sport mode, and then here, as we accelerate, it's a lot more lively now. So as soon as this car's gone past, and away it goes. It really doesn't take long to get to the speed limit for the road, so you do have to go careful, because obviously being Mercedes-Benz, they're built very well, they're German engineering, so it will just keep going. Now, I put the max speed up on screen here on the screen of this car, and obviously the max speed in the UK is 70, but don't forget, obviously in Germany where they're designed, they have the autobahn, so an electric car is no different. But that does bring me very neatly onto range and things like that. So as a general rule of thumb, the faster you go, the more power you consume. So if you want to maximise your range and get the most out of the car, ideally you don't want to be doing those kind of speeds, even 70 arguably. If you want to get the most range out of it per charge, best thing is to kind of stick between, reduce your speed a bit to about 60 or something. So that's what I'm doing now, and it's plenty fast enough. Now, I mentioned earlier about the Mercedes Me Charge. That is a huge part of owning an EV, especially with it Mercedes. On the navigation screen, there's a section on there that lets you search for charge points. And on some charge points, they do actually submit the information if they're being used or not, so it does make it a lot easier, so you can plan your journey a lot more. Now, this multimedia system does do something very, very clever, actually. If you go to put in a route, and I'll put this up on screen here so you can see, when you go to put in a route, it'll actually show you the percentage of the battery that it's going to be when you get there. So it can help you plan, especially if you've never had an EV before, you can plan your journey and actually see what how much of that journey is going to take away from your battery. And it's surprisingly accurate as well. I remember I drove, I think it was about 60, 70 miles or so, and it said though the battery is going to be a certain percentage, and sure enough, when I got there, it was literally bang on that percent. So I don't know how Mercedes worked that out. They must do some kind of averages of kind of journeys and things like that people do, and obviously based to it as well the terrain and the live traffic. So it must be really, really complicated to do, but very, very good to see nevertheless. So what I thought we'd do is actually just swing via a charge point, just so I can show you what it's like to actually own an EV with charging, and just show you how simple it is. Now, I would like to make a video on this in a bit more detail in the future, in the summer, when it's a little bit warmer, because it is surprisingly cold outside at the moment. But I just want to briefly show you guys, obviously, what it's like to charge an EV, because it is surprisingly easy. But there should be one, according to the map, literally just in this car park here. Ah yes, there he is. He's literally just over there, owned by BP Pulse. So let me spin this around. We'll show you exactly what it's like to charge. Now, as I'm all parked up, if I were to use this charge point, what I would do on the sat-nav is literally just open this up and go to the charge symbol that we spoke about earlier. And then in here, you'll see that there is the charge point there. Now, not all charge points are compatible with Mercedes Me Charge, but if they are, this is how simple it is. I quite simply select this, and then you see it's loading on the top there. It then says start charging session. I literally tap that button and that will charge my bank account information that's stored on Mercedes Me Charge. And then what I would do is literally just head over to the charge point and grab the faster one, which is a CCS connector. These are really, really big. You see how thick the cable is on them. But yeah, these are CCS connectors. There is also a Type 2 connector as well, which is this one. This one on the EQA will only charge at 11, but obviously you want the fastest charge speed that this charge point offers. So all you would then do is just grab literally this one here, CCS connector, and then plug it in. But yes guys, it's as simple as that. Now I have already unplugged because I don't actually need to charge the cars, it's almost fully charged anyway. But yeah, it's as easy as that. Literally, as long as you've got those chevrons on the screen there, like the little blue chevrons pointing up, the more of those, the faster it will charge, which is always good to see. And the green dot shows you it's available. Obviously I've not got it plugged in at the moment, so that's why it's green. But yes, just in case a charge point doesn't have Mercedes Me Charge capability, there'll be either contactless or there'll be details of app instructions on how to download the app relevant for that charge point to get it going. So as I said, not all of them contactless, so just make sure you read the instructions on the charge point that you visit, because they all will vary. And make sure as well you pay attention to the pence per kilowatt on the charge point. Just like pence per litre with fuel stations, it will vary. So obviously you want to find the cheapest one. But of course guys, thank you so much for watching. Huge shout out to Sandown Mercedes, as they help provide access to all these awesome cars you see in the videos. It'd be very tricky to do it without them. And of course, if you liked what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and let me know that you've subscribed down below in the comments. This is greatly appreciated. It all helps the channel out. But of course guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, see you then.